Good morning, fathers of daughters. This is Ephraim B. Martin. I am 58 years of age. I am the father of four adult daughters, and I am a girl dad. Welcome to the beautiful state of Colorado. Fathers of daughters, this is another live stream. It is Sunday, October the 8th. Another beautiful day here, and weather's going to be perfect. So, very excited about that. And I welcome all fathers from all ethnic backgrounds and from all cultures. Welcome to Girl Dad YouTube channel. So, fathers of daughters, what I would like to discuss with you today is girl dads, advocacy versus discipline of our daughters. And the reason I want to talk about that, fathers, is because what I'm going to do is I want to explain to you through the lens of the criminal justice system, advocacy versus discipline of our daughters. And fathers, the reason that I want to explain advocacy versus discipline of our daughters through the lens of the criminal justice system is because what I'm attempting to do is give you a different perspective on what advocacy versus discipline looks like, okay, in our normal lives. When we don't have our children involved in the criminal justice system, but just in our normal lives. Now, I worked 30 years with children and 30 years with parents from all socioeconomic backgrounds, from different ethnic groups and different cultures, all kids. I'm a former state of Colorado juvenile probation officer, worked in the criminal justice system for 20 years. I'm also a former dean of students, as well as the teacher working in K-12 education for 10 years. So I have a very unique perspective, and I have a very unique professional background that I definitely enjoy sharing with fathers, letting them know as a father of four adult daughters, I had to take a totally different path with my girls when it came to advocacy versus discipline of our daughters, right? So I want to share a couple of definitions and meanings with you, because what I'm going to be discussing with you, like I said today, I'm going to be having a discussion with you, fathers of daughters, girl dads, this discussion through the lens, looking through the lens of the criminal justice system, okay? Now let's take a look at the word advocacy and the meaning and definition of that, right? Advocacy, public support for or recommendation of a particular cause or policy. That's the definition and the meaning of advocacy, okay? I want you to hold on to that, okay? Discipline. Discipline, the procedure of training people to obey rules or a code of behavior using punishment to correct disobedience. That's the definition and meaning of discipline. Disciplined, showing a controlled form of behavior or way of working. That's the definition and meaning of discipline. And the final one I want to put out there to you, fathers, is punishment. The infliction or imposition of a penalty as retribution for an offense. Okay? So fathers, through the lens of the criminal justice system, let's have a discussion about our baby girls, advocacy versus discipline. And I'm not here to tell fathers how to raise their daughters, right? I consider myself a resource provider. I've written a book called Daddy's Girls. And in my book, Daddy's Girls, I discuss what I believe is a blueprint for the sense of urgency that us as fathers of daughters, we need to have in order for our daughters to become successful, right? So I don't tell fathers how to raise their daughters. Fathers are going to do it different because of their ethnic background, because of their religious background, and because of their cultural backgrounds. We're all different. That's what's going to happen, right? But what I try to do is when I work with fathers, is I try to give fathers a different perspective of what advocacy versus discipline looks like out of our normal lives. Not our everyday lives, but out of our normal lives, right? So when you're talking about advocacy versus discipline out of our normal lives through the lens of the criminal justice system, I have to fall back on my experience professionally as a state juvenile probation officer, as a teacher, as a dean of students working in K-12 education. And the reason I have to do it that way is because I had direct access to children. You know, I have a totally different understanding and totally different approach when it comes to children because of my experience professionally. So one of the things I take pride in, and have always taken pride in, is the ability to work with any child. I've been very, very successful working with children. I've been very, very successful working with parents of children because of my professional background of working in the criminal justice system in K-12 education. So when we're talking about advocacy versus discipline, I believe most adults, they're not disciplined. Most adults are not disciplined. And the reason I say that most adults are not disciplined, because when it comes to children, most adults try to get obedience from a child. And then when that obedience doesn't work for most adults, they want to go straight to punishment. That's a problem. And as fathers of daughters, if we're not disciplined fathers, we will find ourselves in the same situation in our everyday lives of wanting to punish our daughters, punish our kids. That's what adults do, because that's what we're taught, right? We're taught as adults that obedience is everything. To comply, a lot of times, requires punishment. So when I was a probation officer, fathers of daughters, I want to explain something to you. When little girls run away from home, they are in a very, very dark place. And the reason that I say that they're in a very, very dark place is because when a little girl decides she no longer wants to be at home with her parents, she has decided that it is safer for her to be out on the streets versus being in her own home. It's not safe. It's not a safe place for her to be at home with her parents. So as a probation officer, I'm supervising these baby girls, 10 through 18 years of age. 90 to 95% of the little girls I supervised on probation, they were runaways. They were involved in drugs and alcohol, and they were runaways. So early in my career, you know, I have my daughters, and I had to pay attention to what was going on around me because I was going to a profession every day where I saw children, I saw daughters, I saw little girls being messed over by the criminal justice system. I saw families getting messed over by the criminal justice system. And the one thing I know, fathers of daughters, we don't want our daughters in the criminal justice system. We don't. Because the criminal justice system can't do anything for our daughters but make them worse. So when it comes to advocacy versus discipline, I can tell you, myself as a father of 4 adult daughters, birth to 18 years of age, I'm going to do a live stream with my daughters in 2024, probably January, February, or March. I got to get them all together. But I'm going to do a live stream with them because they're adult women now. I've never, from birth to 18 years of age, I never had to discipline my daughters. I never had to discipline them. And the reason that I never had to discipline my daughters from birth to 18 years of age is because as their father, I'm very disciplined. I'm also a former United States Marine Corps veteran. So when it comes to being disciplined, I understand exactly what obedience is all about because I'm a United States Marine Corps veteran. I'm a Marine. I had to have obedience because if I didn't have obedience as a Marine, if I didn't follow orders as a Marine, people died. My fellow Marines could have died, right? So I understand obedience. I don't think obedience is a bad thing. I don't. But when it comes to our baby girls, I want to explain something to you fathers. Like I said, I'm not trying to tell you how to raise your children. That's none of my business. The sense of urgency that we have to have, though, when it comes to our daughters, you don't want them in the criminal justice system, ever. Because once our daughters are in the criminal justice system, it's very difficult for the family to get out of the criminal justice system. And the reason it's difficult for our families to get out of the criminal justice system once we're in it is because the entire family becomes involved. It becomes a priority if you have a child that's in the criminal justice system. I'm going to give you an example. I remember one time I was covering for a colleague of mine in court. There were 2 young men that were in court, had gotten into trouble in the community. They were from Russia. 2 little Russian boys. One was 12, one was 14. They had been going around the communities, breaking into vehicles, causing damage to vehicles. So they got caught, ended up being adjudicated in juvenile court, and they're in court in front of the judge for their sentencing. Now, I had the opportunity, I was covering for a colleague, like I said. I saw something for the first time in my life that I'd never seen in juvenile court. There was an entire community of Russian people, about 50 of them. The village showed up to court that day on behalf of those little boys. And part of the recommendations for these little boys was 50 hours of community service and some other things, right? So what the Russian community did, their parents were there, and some of the elders in the community spoke on behalf of the little boys. And what they told the judge was this: they don't deserve 50 hours of community service. They deserve 500 hours of community service. And that blew me away. So this village that showed up for these little boys had explained to the court how they had shamed the community, the Russian community. And if it was in the court's best interest, if they could take these young men and make sure that these 500 hours of community service would get done. They were going to do 250 hours of community service with the victims, and they were going to do 250 hours of community service with the community. And I thought that was so awesome, because I had never seen anything like that before in my life. They had shamed these little boys. That was a good thing, because they corrected their behavior. So I'm old school. I don't think that shaming children is a bad thing. I really don't. I think there's a time for shaming a child, and there's a place for shaming a child. I don't have a problem with that, as long as the shaming is not done to hurt the child's mental health. As long as the shaming's not done to exploit that child. Because there's a lot of things that go on in today's world that we've gotten away from that actually worked. I remember when I was a dean of students, I would always explain to incoming teachers, freshman teachers that first year on the job, I would explain to these teachers the best way to have classroom management is to build relationships with your incoming students. That is the one way that you're never going to have to worry about writing a referral or kicking them out of class. When I was a teacher, I never kicked any kids out of class. Never had that issue, because I built relationships with children. When you build relationships with your child, there's not going to be any issues with your child, fathers. But you got to build relationships with your kids. What I learned from working with children and working with families for 30 years is when you try to make a child become obedient, there's resentment in that. They're resentful. Once again, I'm not trying to tell you how to raise your kids. I'm just giving you a different perspective. What I do know professionally is that kids work on a I do for you, you do for me system. Kids are loyal. Kids are very, very loyal. Our children are going to be loyal to us, fathers. Our daughters are going to be loyal to us because they never want to disappoint us. The one thing we cannot do as parents and should not do is threaten our kids. And let me explain why. When you threaten a child, that's a verbal action. Because next, there should be punishment, according to adult, right? So if you threaten a child, you tell a child you're going to do something to them. If you don't follow through with punishment, they own you. They straight own you. And then when you come back and try to do it again, they know you're not serious because you didn't follow through on the threat. Threats are verbal. Punishment is nonverbal. A lot of times, punishment is nonverbal. So if you make a threat to a child and you don't follow through, on the punishment, they're going to own you. That's how kids get down. That's how kids rock. That's how a lot of kids respond. So fathers, when it comes to advocacy versus discipline of our daughters, we have a choice. We have a lot of choices that we need to make. And like I said, since most adults are not disciplined, if we're not a disciplined father, anything can happen to our children. Being the head of the household as a father means that we have to be the head of responsibility. We have to be the head of correction. We have to be the head of consistency. I get a lot of pushback from fathers when I'm working with fathers. I get a lot of pushback when I'm talking about advocacy versus discipline. And the reason that I feel that I get a lot of pushback from these fathers is because most fathers, they don't want to be told what to do. Can't tell them shit. They think they know it all. A lot of fathers, they think they know everything. You know, they think if they rear their children harshly or hard or whatever, you know, however you want to rear them, they think that they're going to get a certain response. My daughters will tell you I've never raised my voice and I've never yelled at them. Birth to 18 years of age. I've never had to raise my voice. And I've never had to yell at them because I'm disciplined. I'm a very disciplined human being. And what I had to deal with in the criminal justice system, working with these baby girls and these little boys, and seeing how they got messed over by the criminal justice system, I had to take a totally different approach. My daughters, as long as I have breath in me, were not going to end up in the criminal justice system. That was not an option for me. It ain't happening. No way, no how. So I had to take a totally different approach, fathers. I had to show my daughters through dialogue, through discussion, what that looks like. Like I said, I never had to discipline my daughters. When I tell people this, they think that I'm crazy. They're like, how did you get birth to 18 years of age and you never had to discipline your daughters? Because I'm disciplined. That's why. I'm disciplined as their father. So if I'm disciplined, I didn't have to apply discipline. Those are two different things. I'm disciplined as an adult. So if you're going to punish your children, understand that could go a whole different direction. I'm not telling you what to do. That's not my job. That's not my space. But what I can do is explain to you what it looks like if you have your daughter end up in the criminal justice system. Because if your daughter ends up in the criminal justice system, parents, you're going to lose your power to the courts. You're going to lose your power to the probation department. You're going to lose your power to therapists. You're going to use your power if they end up in a group home. See, when your children end up in the criminal justice system, guess what, parents? More people have a say in their life. One thing I noticed with a lot of parents that had their daughters that were in the criminal justice system when I was supervising them, a lot of parents didn't like when the courts order psychological evaluations of their daughters, of their kids. And the reason I believe that a lot of parents don't like to have psychological evaluations done on their daughters is because kids tell the truth about family secrets. Kids tell the truth about what's going on in the household. Kids tell the truth. When you separate a child from their parent and they're being evaluated, they're going to tell the truth. Like I said, 90 to 95% of the little girls that I had on probation that ran away from home, that were doing drugs and alcohol, guess where they got the drugs and alcohol from? Their parents. Kids aren't going to diamond their parents unless you put them in the position to which they have to diamond their parents. Kids aren't going to tell other adults they're getting their drugs from their parents because those are their parents. But if you put them in the position to where they got to tell the truth, oh, they're going to tell you the truth where they got the drugs. They're going to tell you the truth where they got the alcohol. So fathers, when it comes to advocacy versus discipline of our daughters, we have to get this right. Because if we don't get this right, not only are we going to fail our daughters, but if they end up in the criminal justice system, we will definitely lose our power with the courts. I'm telling you. I'm telling you. We will lose the power with the courts. If Department of Human Services, aka Social Services, aka Child Protection Services, end up in our life and they get temporary custody of our children, I am telling you, your life is about to change forever. Because when therapists enter your life, guardian ad litems, which are attorneys that are appointed for children, representing their best interest, group homes, when all these criminal justice professionals enter your life, you no longer have a say. Because what the court's going to make you do is comply. And then when you don't comply, you're not getting your kid back for a very long time until you decide to comply. So fathers and daughters, you don't want your daughters in the criminal justice system. I'm telling you, you do not. Advocate for your daughters. Be their best advocate, fathers. Because through the lens of the criminal justice system, discipline looks a lot different than it does in our everyday lives. So fathers, I just wanted to share that with you. I just wanted to explain some things to you. Advocacy versus discipline of our daughters. The struggle is real, fathers. The struggle is definitely real. But we do not want our daughters involved in the criminal justice system. There is no reason for our daughters to ever want to run away from home. That's crazy to me. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old little girl, not at home with her parents, on the streets. We don't know where she's at. Law enforcement's involved. Chances are she's going to end up dead. That's what's going to happen to her. Chances are she's going to be sexually assaulted. Chances are she's going to be pimped out. So fathers, we have a big responsibility, advocacy versus discipline of our daughters. We do. We have a huge responsibility. And we can't blow this. We got to get it right, dads. Because if we don't get it right and the criminal justice system enters, mom and dad, you will comply. I promise you. Or the criminal justice system will make your life interesting. I just want to share that, fathers of daughters. Let me know what your thoughts are. Feel free to comment, please. I want to know where you're at. I want to know how you process what we're discussing in my videos. We have to be a part of the solution with our daughters, fathers. We have to. We have to be consistent. We have to provide that protection and safety. Because if we don't, and the criminal justice system gets involved, we're done. I'm telling you, we're done. All right, fathers, this has been another live stream. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your understanding. I appreciate you all. We're needed in our children's lives, particularly our baby girls. If we are not there from birth to 18 years of age, any and everything can happen to them. So fathers, hang in there. Keep your head up. Continue to do the best you can. I appreciate you. I just want to let you know that. I appreciate you fathers that are being diligent and vigilant. All right, I'm out until next week's live stream. Peace.